All right, good morning and welcome back. Yesterday we began talking about special right triangles. So if you haven't watched the video from yesterday, please go back and do that. So once again, a special right triangle, some sort of right triangle with a regular feature that makes calculations on this triangle easier for us. Okay, and yesterday we talked about the 45, 45, 90 triangle. They have two legs of length 1 and a square root of 2 for the hypotenuse. Obviously, it's not always that size. Sometimes it's scaled up, but that is always the ratio between the sides. The hypotenuse is always square root of 2 times as long as each leg. Now, that one was our first example, and it was a little easier than the one today because 45 and 45, we know it's isosceles, so the two legs are always the same. Now, today, we are going to talk about the second type of special right triangle, the 30, 60, 90 triangle. This one is a little bit more complicated because with three different lengths of or sizes of angles, there's three different sizes of sides. Now, the first thing it says the hypotenuse is always twice as long as the shorter leg. Now, if we look here, the shorter leg is always going to be across from the smallest angle. So find your 30 degrees, go across from that. That we would put a 1 there. Twice as long as that would give us the hypotenuse. Okay, that is always the case. And then it says, and the longer leg is square root of 3 times as long as the shorter leg. So whatever's across from square root of, or from 60, that'll be the longer leg. So square root of 3 here. If we took 1 times square root of 3, we'd get square root of 3. So this is our proportion that's always the case, 1, square root of 3, and 2. That's always the comparison of the sides on a 30, 60, 90 triangle. So if we have a 30, 60, 90 triangle here, we can use proportions to help us figure out what these x and y's will be. So first, we're going to solve for this y. And if we think about it, we'll always start. I recommend take whatever side you have. So I have a 15, just put it over your variable. So 15 over y. Now we're going to set that equal, and we're going to compare this to this triangle up here. Okay, and set up a proportion, and then we can solve by cross multiplying. So the 15, that's one across from the 30. So that will be comparable. Across from the 30 was a 1. So I'm going to put a 1 on top. Meanwhile, the y, that's our hypotenuse across from the 90. Our hypotenuse up here was 2. So I put 2. We cross multiply. We will get y equals 30. And that's all there is to it. We're done. Now, we know what y is. However, we also need to find x. Now, in my opinion, it's easier. Always use the one across from 30 if you can, because that has a 1. That'll make your life easier. However, if you wanted to, you could use that new value of 30, and you could put x and 30 together, but I think it's better to deal with the x and the 15. Okay, so it doesn't matter which one's on top, x or 15. The key is just have them both, so 15 over x. Now, once again, the 15 is comparable to the leg with a 1. The x has a square root of 3. Now, if we cross multiply, we will get 1x, or x equals 15 square root of 3. And we would be done. Now we look at our next one. Similar triangle in that it's 30, 60, 90. So this is similar to this one. This is similar to this one. This time we got a different piece of information. The 36, that is our hypotenuse. So it doesn't matter which one you solve for first. In my opinion, we said we want to deal with the 1 or the one across from the 30. So our 30 is here, we go across, that's our x. So if I do x over 36, we can set that equal. The x was comparable to the 1, the 36 to 2. We cross multiply, we get 2x equals 36. And we divide by 2, and we will get x to equal 18. And that is all there is to it. We're done. Now, we got to find the y still. So since we know that this one is 18, you could use 36 again. You could do y over 36, and then we'd set that equal to square root of 3 over 2. That's fine, but you're going to have to divide. I think it's easier whenever you can deal with this 1. Okay, so I'm going to put the 18 over y. Now the 18 was our shortest side, so that has a 1. The y is our longer side, so we put square root of 3. We cross multiply, we will get y equals 18 square root of 3. Okay, and much like last time, the simplest examples are pretty easy. All we do is take half of this hypotenuse, and that gives you this side. Take that small side and multiply it by square root of 3, and you'll get the longer side. Okay, so if we look here at example 3, half of 20 would be 10. So we know then that x has to be 10 because that is over here, the side across from the 30 degrees. Meanwhile, we take that and we multiply it by square root of 3. We'll get what y is. Y equals 10 times the square root of 3. And that one was pretty easy to do. Now, sometimes it's totally up to you. If you can see what I just did, go for it. If not, just always set up this proportion. The proportion method will always work for you. Okay, so number 4 here. And on this one, we have both an x and a y. Now, I don't have a 30 degrees over here, but since there's a 60 there, I know if that's 90 plus 60, it's 150. Take that away from 180, we left with 30. That has to be 30 degrees. So whatever's across from 30, we want to find first, because then we can just double it to get what x is. So if we do y over 4 square root of 3, the y is comparable to our 1, and we'll put square root of 3 on the bottom. We cross multiply. Y square root of 3 equals 4 square root of 3. We divide by square root of 3, divide by square root of 3, and we'll get y to equal 4. Now, to find x, we just double that, so we'll get x equals 8, and we are done. Okay. Now, a few more. Hopefully it's starting to make sense. On this next one, we are given the hypotenuse. Once again, in my opinion, the easiest method, if you know the hypotenuse, just divide it by 2 and you'll figure out what the side across from 30 is. Once again, there's no 30 there, but if this is 60, we know there's a 30 here. So over here, that y would have to be, that y would have to be half of the hypotenuse. So we know then that y equals 7. Now to find our longer side, we just take that value of y and multiply it by square root of 3. So we get 7 square root of 3. Okay, if we look here, 30. So we know across here, this y is comparable to our 1. So I can do y over 8 square root of 3. That will equal 1 over square root of 3. Much like number 4, when we cross multiply, we'll get y square root of 3 equals 8 square root of 3. We divide the square root of 3's, they cancel here. Divide square root of 3, cancels there. We're left with y equals 8. To find x, we just double that. So x will equal 16. Okay, 4 more problems. This next one, once again, we know that 15 is across from the 30. So if I double the short side, I will get the hypotenuse. 15 times 2 is 30. If I multiply the short side by square root of 3, I will get what x is. So x equals 15 square root of 3. Now 8 is kind of the opposite. We have the hypotenuse, so instead let's divide that by 2. 6 divided by 2 gives us what x is. So x will equal 6 divided by 2, which is 3. We still can just multiply it by square root of 3, and we'll get 3 square root of 3 over here. Okay, now this final one. We've been solving these with proportions, but hopefully you've noticed whenever you're given the side across from the 60, you can just divide it by square root of 3. That's the process that happened both on 4 and on 6. So 4 square root of 3 divided by square root of 3, the square root of 3's will cancel. That means that n is equal to 4. All I have to do now is double it to get m to be 8. Now number 10, this one is going to tie in something from yesterday, so watch very closely. Even if everything's made sense, this one's a little different. Now first off, that's our 60. I know this picture is not really drawn to scale. Please forgive me for that. But 60 up here, which means this is our 30. So we know that x has a value of 1, or it's comparable to the 1. So if I did x over 9, and then I'm going to set that equal 2, the 1 goes on top, the square root of 3 goes on the bottom. We cross multiply again, square root of 3x equals 9. Here's where things change. When we divide by the square root of 3, everything's good. Once again, just like last time, these cancel out. However, up above, every time we did it so far, the square root of 3 canceled out with the square root of 3 up above. That's not the case here. And I know some of you might be thinking, well, 3 goes into 9, so we can reduce that. But this is square root of 3, which does not go into 9. Okay? So we need to rationalize the denominator. We talked about this yesterday. Now, yesterday we multiplied by square root of 2 over square root of 2. That would not help us that much because if I multiply the bottom by square root of 2, I'm going to get square root of 6. That doesn't cancel out the square root. So this time I'm going to choose square root of 3. Whatever was on the bottom, that's what we choose. Now when I multiply that, I'm going to get 9 square root of 3 on top, and I'm just going to get 3 on the bottom. So if you think about it, square root of 3 times square root of 3, you could also think about that as square root of 9, but we know the square root of 9 is 3. Now from here, we're almost done. The 9 and the 3 here can cancel. There's just 1 on the bottom, there's 3 on top. The square root of 3 we can't touch because that's inside the square root. Okay, so to write our answer now, that tells us that the x is equal to 3 square root of 3. And that is the value here. Now, in order to figure out what y is, the hypotenuse, remember, all we have to do is double that. So here we did 15 times 2 was 30. It's the same approach, except now it's 3 square root of 3 times 2. That might be a little difficult, but if we times that by 2, you just multiply by 2, you multiply this front part, 3 times 2. That'll give us 6, and we'll have 6 square root of 3 as our answer. So, hopefully this made sense. If not, click back through the video. Be sure to ask me any questions. There's a small Delta math assignment again for today. So please let me know if you need any help. But also, please get that done. Hope you guys have a great day.